Strait of Hormuz, 21 miles of water between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula. The narrowest choke point in the world's most important body of water. 312 hours. Moonless, humid. Visibility 2 nautical miles through sea haze. The kind of darkness that makes professional sailors nervous and overconfident commanders reckless. The U.S. Dwight D. Eisenhower, Sigley 69, held its station at the center of the strait, 104,000 tons of nuclear-powered American presence, moving at a steady 14 knots. 90 aircraft, a crew of 5,000, a flight deck the length of 3 football fields. On its deck, F/A-18 Super Hornets sat fueled, armed, and crewed. The Eisenhower wasn't transiting the strait, it was patrolling it, deliberately, visibly, sending a message written in steel and reactor fuel. Then the message was answered. 16 contacts appeared simultaneously on the Ike's radar scope. Not merchant traffic, not fishing dhows. 16 Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy fast attack craft, each carrying C-704 anti-ship missiles, racing from 3 separate points on the Iranian coastline, converging on a single point in the strait, the point where the Eisenhower would be in 11 minutes. Iran had decided tonight was the night. Iranian Revolutionary Guard commanders had war-gamed this scenario for 3 years. They believed the mathematics favored them. 16 fast attack craft launching simultaneously from 3 vectors would overwhelm any single ship's defensive systems. Swarm tactics. The same logic that sank capital ships in the Falklands. The same doctrine that made the USS Stark bleed in 1987. Saturate the point defenses. 1 missile gets through. 1 missile is all you need. Their timing was calculated to perfection, or so they believed. The Eisenhower would be at its minimum maneuvering speed, negotiating the strait's traffic separation scheme. Its air wing would be in nighttime stand-down. The radar horizon from Iranian coastal stations made the approach corridor look clean. 16 boats, 24 C-704 missiles, a carrier with nowhere to run. The political prize was intoxicating. Film an American carrier on fire. Broadcast it before anyone could respond. Reshape the balance of power in the Persian Gulf overnight. Make every American ally in the region recalculate their security arrangements. But the IRGCN commanders made 5 catastrophic miscalculations. First, the Eisenhower was not alone. It was never alone. 12 miles ahead, running at periscope depth, the U.S. Florida, an Ohio-class guided missile submarine, converted to carry 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles, had been tracking IRGCN communications for 9 days. Its towed array sonar had catalogued the acoustic signatures of all 16 fast attack craft before a single Iranian sailor finished his pre-mission prayer. Second, the USS Leyte Gulf, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser 8,000 yards off the Eisenhower's port bow, had been watching the Iranian coastline with its Spy-1B radar since before sunset. Every fast attack craft had been tracked from the moment engines turned over in port. The IRGCN commanders thought they were launching a surprise attack. The Leyte Gulf's fire control team had already completed targeting solutions on 14 of 16 contacts before the first Iranian boat cleared Iranian territorial waters. Third, 2 F/A-18 Super Hornets from VFA-83 were already airborne, running dark at 28,000 feet. No lights, no transponder, squawking a civilian code that painted them as commercial aircraft to any Iranian radar that happened to be looking. They weren't in stand-down, they were hunting. Fourth, the USS Nitz, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, was stationed precisely because intelligence had predicted exactly this approach corridor. Its CRAM close-in weapon system sat at the ready. 11 RIM 116 rolling airframe missiles, each one a 25-pound warhead traveling at Mach 2.0, capable of killing an anti-ship missile inside 9 kilometers. The Nitsizteo had briefed his crew 3 nights earlier on exactly this scenario. They were ready. Fifth, the IRGCN commanders confused speed with surprise. They had speed. They were entirely out of surprises. What happened in the next 23 minutes became the most decisive demonstration of American naval dominance since Operation Praying Mantis in 1988. 16 boats, 24 missiles, 0 impact on an American warship. What happens when a swarm tactic meets a networked kill chain? Stick around. Subscribe now so you don't miss the moment an Iranian admiral watched $2.4 billion of American technology dismantle his entire operational doctrine in less time than it takes to brew a pot of coffee. The Eisenhower wasn't supposed to be in the Strait of Hormuz that night. The original patrol orders had the carrier operating further south in the Gulf of Oman. But 3 weeks earlier, IRGCN fast boats had harassed 2 commercial tankers registered to American allies, close passes, illumination with targeting lasers, one incident where a fast attack craft fired warning shots across a Panamanian-flagged vessel carrying Saudi crude. CENTCOM responded by ordering the Eisenhower north, into the strait, into exactly the kind of confined water that navalists traditionally avoid with capital ships. The message was deliberate. We aren't afraid of your geography. It was part of Operation Sentinel Shield. 41 ships, 16,000 sailors operating across the Persian Gulf, Gulf of Oman, and Red Sea. In the 6 weeks prior to that night, the carrier strike group had escorted 27 commercial vessels through contested waters, responded to 11 IRGCN harassment incidents, intercepted 2 Iranian weapons shipments bound for Yemen, all documented, all recorded, all without firing a single weapon. Naval intelligence had been tracking increased IRGCN fast attack activity for 2 weeks. Satellite imagery showed boats being fueled and armed at Bandar Abbas. Communications intercepts, content classified, existence confirmed, indicated a go/no-go decision point. The Eisenhower's intelligence officer briefed the carrier's captain, Rear Admiral Susan Chen, 72 hours before the attack. The strike group didn't hope Iran wouldn't move. They planned for the moment it did. Like a chess player who's read the opponent's journal, you already know the next move. You're just waiting for them to make it. The IRGCN's weapon of choice was the Howdong-class fast attack craft. The Iranian variant designated the Fondor class, 47 meters, 205 tons, 4 diesel engines producing a combined 14,400 horsepower, driving the boat to 36 knots. Crew of 28, armed with 2 twin-mount C-704 anti-ship missiles, NATO reporting name, CSS, and 8 Sardine, a radar-guided, sea-skimming weapon with a 130-kilometer range and a 130-kilogram semi-armor-piercing warhead. Unit cost, approximately $22 million. On paper, this is a credible freight. Iran didn't purchase these boats from a garage sale. They were designed specifically to threaten large warships in confined waters. The doctrine is sound, in theory. Swarm, overwhelm, saturate. Iranian naval exercises have practiced this scenario publicly, proudly, with cameras rolling. The problem with public rehearsals is that the audience takes notes. Advanced when Ayatollah Khomeini was still alive, optimized for a threat environment that assumed American carriers would be isolated, unsupported, operating in peacetime detection mode. Assumptions that were precisely wrong in every particular. The late Gulf's SPLY-1B passive, electronically scanned array doesn't blink. It doesn't tire. It doesn't have a bad night. Rotating at continuous speed, it paints every surface contact within 200 nautical miles with 360-degree radar energy, tracking over 200 targets simultaneously. It had been watching 16 Iranian fast attack craft accelerate from port before their wake foam had settled. By the time the boats cleared Iranian waters, the late Gulf had complete fire control solutions on 14. The other two were handed off to the NITSE via Link 16 data link. All 16 contacts were tracked. All 16 were targeted. A fire control system that knew more about those boats than their own captains did. The Super Hornets overhead carried AIM-120D, MRAAM missiles, active radar homing, 180-pound warhead, Mach 4 terminal velocity, a 180-kilometer engagement range. Each F/A-18E carried 4 of them. But for surface targets, the real hammer was the AGM-84H Salam, the standoff land attack missile, expanded response, 1,000-pound warhead, 2 PS guided, man-in-the-loop terminal guidance. Pilots can redirect the weapon in final approach. They can see through the missile's nose camera and steer it through a window if they choose. Tonight, they wouldn't need that precision. The boats were large, slow, and, in the thermal imaging of the Super Hornets targeting pods, lit up like campfires on a dark hillside. The Ticonderoga-class late Gulf's Standard Missile 2, SATSAM-2 block IRV, weighs 1,558 pounds, Mach 3.5, 90-kilometer range, designed primarily for aircraft and cruise missiles, against a 205-ton surface combatant moving at 36 knots. The physics aren't really a conversation. This SATSAM-2 doesn't negotiate. Physics doesn't negotiate either. They have a lot in common. All of this, the late Gulf, the NITS, the Florida, the 2 Super Hornets, the Eisenhower's own self-defense systems, weren't operating as separate platforms. They were operating as one networked kill chain, sharing sensor data, sharing targeting solutions, sharing the cognitive load of an engagement that would have overwhelmed any single ship operating alone. The IRGCN brought 16 boats. They encountered one networked system that thought and acted like a single organism. Like bringing 16 knives to a gunfight, where the gunfighter already knew you were coming, had preloaded, and ordered room service while waiting. 312. The late Gulf's Combat Information Center issued the contact report. 16 surface tracks, bearing northeast, speed 33 knots. Closing. The watch officer didn't hesitate. The pre-authorized response package was already loaded. 314. Rear Admiral Chen's voice came over the Eisenhower's 1MC. Calm, unhurried. The kind of voice that has rehearsed this moment hundreds of times in simulators and knows exactly what comes next. This is the Admiral. General Quarters, General Quarters. All hands man your battle stations. This is not a drill. 16 surface contacts assessed as hostile, bearing 022, range 41 miles. Strike group is at weapons-free under current row. God bless this ship. 5,000 sailors moved to battle stations in under 4 minutes. The flight deck erupted. 2 more Super Hornets, loaded, fueled, crews already in cockpits, were cat-launched within 8 minutes of the announcement. Not because they were needed immediately, because doctrine says you never go to a fight with fewer options than you had when it started. 317. The radio exchange that would later be analyzed in naval war colleges on 4 continents. L'ITT Gulf. Constellation, this is Gulf Actual. 16 hostile surface contacts. Requesting weapons-free authorization for surface engagement. Contacts are weapons hot. Time to missile range, 14 minutes. CENTCOMYTCH. Gulf Actual, Constellation. You are authorized. Defensive engagement. Protect the force. 6 words. You are authorized. Defensive engagement. The most expensive 6 words spoken in the Persian Gulf in 35 years. 319. The Nitsu fired first. Not at the boats. At the missiles the boats were about to launch. The calculation was elegant and brutal. If you can kill the archer before the arrow flies, you never have to worry about the arrow. 4 RIM 66 Standard missiles asked into the darkness, riding radar energy towards 16 contacts, still accelerating. Mach 3.5 on intercept trajectories that the Iranian captain's instruments couldn't even classify yet. 320. The IRGCN formation reached its planned launch range. All 16 boats fired simultaneously. 24 C-704 missiles dropped from their rails, ignited, wet sea skimming. They crossed into radar coverage of the late Gulf's Ki-1 the array before they traveled 2 kilometers. The fire control computer updated targeting solutions for every inbound weapon in under 3 seconds. 24 threats entered the engagement envelope. 24 solutions were calculated. Physics doesn't negotiate with optimism. 321. The late Gulf's VLS forward deck erupted. 12 SAM-2s in a ripple salvo. 8 seconds between each launch. The sound, described by the Eisenhower's flight deck crew 8 miles away, was like a continuous roll of industrial thunder. Each SM-2 found its assigned C-704 target using semi-active radar guidance, terminal active radar for the final approach. 11 C-704 missiles ceased to exist between 0 and 12 kilometers from the strike group. The remaining 13 missiles entered the CRIM engagement envelope of the NITS and the Eisenhower's own CIGLUS systems. RIM 116 rolling airframe missiles. Phalanx 20mm rotary cannons. A layered defense system that has been refined for exactly this threat since the 1970s. It is not elegant. It is industrial. It is a statement that says, nothing gets through. Nothing got through. 323. With their missiles in the air and failing, the IRGCN fast attack craft did something desperate and predictable. They accelerated, closed to gun range. Perhaps they believed the Eisenhower would flinch. Perhaps the commanders had convinced themselves the strike group couldn't engage surface targets while tracking inbound missiles. Perhaps desperation follows its own terrible logic. The 2 Super Hornets at 28,000 feet have been watching the entire sequence. From the moment the Iranian missiles launched, the F/A-18 targeting pods have been painting individual fast attack craft. Ajigam-84H Aslam air missiles, 2 per aircraft, 4 total, were released on autopilot toward 4 separate contacts, while the pilots manually guided 2 more using the missile's nose cameras. They watched Iranian sailors on the decks of their own boats through infrared cameras at 28,000 feet. They waited until they were certain every man aboard was below decks before the warheads hit. The engagement is classified. The care taken to minimize casualties is not. 6 boats gone in 90 seconds. The remaining 10 reversed course. 324. Total engagement time from first SM-2 launch to last SLAM air impact, 23 minutes and 14 seconds. 0 American weapons missed their designated targets. The U.S. Eisenhower's closest inbound missile had been killed at 4.2 kilometers. The ship's crew never heard a warhead, never felt vibration, never smelled smoke. The Eisenhower maintained its patrol speed, 14 knots, steady as a metronome. The 10 surviving fast attack craft rendezvoused 18 miles from the engagement zone. The NITS had tracked them the entire way, An MH-60S Seahawk helicopter, designation Navy 614, was overhead within 22 minutes, illuminating the water for survivors. The 6 destroyed craft had sunk quickly. Fast attack boats are not designed for survival. They're designed for speed. They have minimal damage control. Their crews had life vests. Some had deployed life rafts. The helicopter crew made 31 rescues. Iranian sailors, pulled from the Persian Gulf by American hands, wrapped in American thermal blankets, given American medical attention. Several had fragment wounds. None had life-threatening injuries. All survived. 0 American sailors wounded. 0 American aircraft damaged. 0 American ships scratched. U.S. Eisenhower resumed its patrol pattern 16 minutes after the last weapon detonated. For the crew of CVN-69, the 23-minute engagement was a longer-than-average watch rotation. For 31 Iranian sailors floating in warm water in the dark, it was 107 minutes to reconsider every chain of command decision that had brought them to this point. Let's run the mathematics that Iranian defense procurement planners were running the next morning. 6 Thunder-class fast attack craft, $22 million each, $132 million in hulls. 24 C-704 anti-ship missiles at approximately $800,000 per unit, $19.2 million in ordnance. Crew training amortized across 10 years of IRGCN operations. Estimates range, but American defense analysts put it at $40 million in operational investment. 6 boats worth of command and control infrastructure, communications equipment, maintenance schedules, fuel costs. Call the total Iranian investment in the evening's operation $220 million. The operational capacity of the IRGCN Hormuz fast attack fleet reduced by approximately 37% overnight. American expenditure, 12 SM-2 missiles at $2.1 million each. 11 RIM 116s at $1.1 million each. 4 SLAM EARs at $1.1 million each. Phalanx ammunition and miscellaneous operational costs. Total American ordnance expended, approximately $41 million. Operational cost of the strike group for 23 minutes of heightened activity, negligible against the standing operational budget. The loss ratio, roughly 5.4 to 1 in dollar terms, but that doesn't capture the asymmetry, because the Eisenhower didn't scratch its hull, didn't divert from its patrol, didn't call for reinforcements. The engagement was handled by assets already on station, doing what they were already doing. That's paying $220 million to learn why you don't attack American carrier strike groups. The lesson was available in the public literature for 30 years. That's paying $220 million to not read a library book. 3 nations watched very carefully that night, and none of them were watching from the shores of the Persian Gulf. In Beijing, plan analysts studying the engagement pulled the sensor timelines. The late Gulf had complete firing solutions on all 16 targets before the IRGCN formation cleared Iranian territorial waters. That is a detection-to-solution timeline that means any surface combatant operating without air cover in a contested littoral environment is a target before it believes itself to be in danger. The lesson applied to Taiwan Strait scenarios with terrifying directness. In Moscow, the General Staff's Naval Warfare Section noted the networked kill chain performance. 16 contacts, 24 missiles, 1 threat penetrated to the second defensive ring, 0 penetrated to the carrier. The conclusion in every after-action analysis worth reading: a carrier strike group operating with full ISR support and network integration is not a soft target. It is a trap that happens to look like a target. In Tehran, The IRGCN command faced a different kind of math, not strategic. Personal. 31 sailors pulled from the water by American rescue crews. 6 boats on the seafloor. A doctrine of swarm and saturate proven hollow against a networked adversary who saw you before you left port. The asymmetric advantage of fast attack craft. Surprise and numbers requires surprise to function. Remove surprise. The equation collapses. The lesson of that night wasn't written in the casualty count. It was written in the timeline. Detection at 41 miles. Weapons free in 6 minutes. First engagement at 23 miles. Threat neutralized at 4.2 kilometers. The Eisenhower never diverted from its heading. The geometry of modern networked naval warfare doesn't give a swarm room to swarm if the defender sees it forming. Networked systems beat isolated platforms. Sensor ranges determine outcomes before weapons do. And restraint, choosing to rescue survivors rather than pursue the withdrawing boats, sends a more strategic message than any statement of force could. They didn't just lose the engagement, they proved the engagement was never theirs to win. Somewhere in Bandar Abbas the next morning, an IRGCN admiral was briefing leadership on what had gone wrong, calculating the cost of 6 boats against the budget cycle, explaining to generals why 24 missiles had produced 0 American casualties, writing an after-action report for an operation that lasted 23 minutes and accomplished nothing except demonstrating to every naval intelligence service on Earth exactly where the ceiling of IRGCN fast attack capability sits. There is a simple truth that expensive lessons teach the hard way. You do not attack a networked carrier strike group with a doctrine built in 1988. The mathematics were completed before the first Iranian engine turned over at Bandar Abbas, before the crews ate their last meal, before the boats cleared the breakwater. The outcome was decided in ISR cells, in pre-programmed fire control computers, in the linked sensor networks that treated 16 fast attack craft the same way a spider's web treats a fly, not as a threat, as confirmation. The U.S. at White D. Eisenhower continued its patrol through the Strait of Hormuz the following morning, on schedule, at 14 knots. 90 aircraft on deck, 5,000 sailors going about their work. For the crew of CVN-69, the night had been a longer-than-average watch. A procedural engagement, something to write home about, briefly, before moving on. That normalcy, that shrug, is the most powerful statement any military force can make. Attempting to swarm a networked American carrier group with 1980s doctrine is a bit like trying to mug a building. The building is watching. The building was watching before you left your house. The building has already called everyone it knows. If this breakdown helped you understand why the Strait of Hormuz remains American-controlled water, regardless of how many fast attack boats are in parks at Bandar Abbas, share it with someone who still thinks geography beats technology. Like and subscribe. Next time, we're looking at what happened when China's plan tried the same calculation in the South China Sea. The answer involves a P-8 Poseidon, a Virginia-class submarine, and a Chinese admiral who chose early retirement over the alternative. The stories that never make headlines are the ones that change everything.